You got a lot of money in the bank to get.
Yeah.
That's what I was told.
Before they go through the work and actually evaluate the application, I want to make sure the commission knows.
If you're not overdoing any payments, I guess.
If you guys have money to watch it, they can.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. All right, we're gonna get started here. Welcome everybody to Princeton Public Utilities Commission's meeting, April 26th at 1 o'clock. We have roll call.
I do.
It's under control, thank you. Approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I have none.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Do we have any public comments or attention
Don't say.
to anything? Chrissy, do you have any? Okay.
I do not.
Thank you both. Consent agenda. Do we have any questions on that? If not, then I would ask for an approval or a motion to move forward.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Updates. Mr. Linden.
Nothing really has happened since the last time we met. Business as usual.
Reset my clock.
Surely you just.
Some of the guys went to a damage prevention seminar that was in St. Cloud, put on by Gopher State One Call. They just get updated, get an update on the rules. Get an update on the rules, new procedures and stuff like that. They also have had an MMUA training. The topic escapes me right now. The transformer for Glen Metalcraft has been ordered. That is on its way. And then, yeah, we've had a few outages. The south substation, we had a piece of equipment fail. That was what, April 7th?
7th, correct.
The 7th was when it failed that Friday morning. And then subsequently the following Wednesday, we had technical difficulties with the breaker, which caused one. When we tried to switch over to the power plant so Great River could do their work. Following Monday, everything went well. When we put it back on the engines to get Great River to put it back to normal. And then subsequently 2 days later, the transmission line went out, which was nothing to do with us. It was just due to the high winds that went through just south of here. So that was nothing that we were involved with, but nevertheless, the feed coming into town, the transmission line went out, which knocked out the south sub and the power plant, so we had to run again. But when the initial part, the equipment failure in the south sub, that blinked the transmission line basically all the way down to Elk River, over to Big Lake, and then the second time the transmission line went down due to the trees and the high winds, that was a little bit more of an outage. That was down to Big Lake, over, I think, almost to Coon Rapids, Big Elk River, a little bit south of there, so that was a little bit more of a larger outage area. So, yeah. But unfortunate series of events there, but like I said, the part that failed is was a 1994 model, I believe it was. It's a rare piece of equipment, but then subsequently River did have 2 more fail within about 7 or 8 days of ours failing. One of them was in the Benton County sub, which is just south of the Highway 95 to Highway 23 intersection. That was a 230 kVA, 230,000 volt substation. That one just failed, and then they had one, I think it was up by Russ City. But that one was a suspect one that I believe they said had been leaking for a little bit. So that one, so they've had 3 of them, but otherwise they're supposedly a rare occurrence. So we got one from Great River, got it repaired in a very timely fashion, I think, for what it could have been. So, but the outage originally, I think, was 18 seconds, and that was basically just Great River's protection devices tripping out and clearing the lines. So there was really actually no sustained outage that when the equipment failed. So, yeah.
I had to laugh at, happened to be talking to Chris at wastewater a couple days after that. That's a totally different subject, but he kind of joked about it. Yeah, I've worked here 13 years, and I think I've ran that generator one time. And back up. So.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he had to do it twice in roughly a week.
Yep. Yep.
And he was just laughing about it.
Yep. Yeah, no, it happens, but we learned a lot from it. Got brushed up on our procedures and our processes, so some good did come out of it. So
there's some switching maneuvers and stuff that hadn't been done since that 13 years ago that we've had plans on how to do, but very few people here had actually done it. So we were able to run through that 3 times in that week. So everybody's.
It's not something you really want to do a test on, because if it doesn't go right, then people are in the dark, and then they get all excited, and upset, because the power's out. But yeah. So unfortunately, it happened, and but we've got the problem diagnosed and fixed with the breaker. Like I said, that Monday, we had it all fixed and everything went smoothly Monday when we went to go put it all back together. So what happened that first Wednesday did not happen on the following Monday. So, and then unfortunately the following Wednesday was out of our control. So.
But we still had our generation up within 28 minutes.
I think 28 minutes was the longest outage I've seen. And then we did have to shut some customers off subsequently later on that day on the north end of town because there was a tree that fell on the line, but that was a separate incident. We had to pull some cutouts on 12th Street, but that was a different incident. But yep. But I think on that initial outage, when the transmission line went down, I think the longest outage on the meters I've seen was 28 minutes. And that's about as short as it's gonna get when we're here and then it goes out.
To switch over from the main feed, the 69 line goes down to get units running, tie the subs together, and then pick up the load back off of picking up all the load from the different areas. We have to go a little bit slower to give the engines time to pick up that load and ramp up as we go. So a few minutes in between each time we grab a breaker, which is a big part of town, to allow them to catch up and get stable again.
I think in hindsight, it's kind of shows the value of having our local, for the city of Princeton, having our own generation and how we can come back up with unforeseen circumstances.
I guess the only concern was that when we were running after the equipment failure, we had everything tied to the power plant, and that was it Thursday, Friday.
Yeah,
it was a little bit warm, so we had to run the cat.
7 hours Thursday and 6 hours again on Friday to take some stress off of some equipment.
Some of the transformers were getting a little bit warm.
Everything was feeding through the power plant sub and control the switches and stuff to tie back to the self. And
some of the transformers were getting a little bit warm because of the temperatures and the loads, just the air temperatures, because it was 85, 86 degrees that day. So,
which is the whole reason for the cat plan, to look at that stuff in phase 3. So.
Yep. Other than that,
how long for the transformer to come in?
Like For Glen Meadow?
Yeah.
Oh, Glen Metal, I thought you were talking about the substation, Jennifer, that's why I looked over there.
I can add that as B.
The order acknowledgement said the production week was October, the first week of October, and I haven't gotten clarification if that, I was told on the phone that that was the ship date, but on the quote it said it was the production date, so October is sometime, you know, the salesman said that was the ship date, but it said on the quote that it was the production date. So if it is the production date, it usually takes them a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, so I would still believe it would be in October sometime.
And we got indication from the customer that they have a production date of January for the switchgear, so they can't do anything with it. The
That was from
switchgear.
the electrician, yeah,
Yeah.
and then when I went out to Dan and told him and showed him the order acknowledgement, I think some of their time frames were even maybe a little bit longer than that, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
So we should be ahead of the game.
Their schedule had gotten pushed out a little bit further than that even though, so.
So that project's moving forward, and maybe that's in Michelle's.
Yeah, every indication, it's
Okay.
all go on.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. Mr. Schmidt, please.
So a little more on the power plant stuff there. The first 19 days of the month, we put 68 engine hours on between test runs and the outages and all that stuff. So we got a pretty good bunch of runtime on the units this month. And our planned maintenance outage got pushed, being that it all kind of fell in the same time frame we were supposed to start with the MISO scheduling. That got pushed till fall, so we kind of lost our window there. Nothing in the plant, it was more upgrade stuff, so we're not deferring anything out that way. Yeah, I would say we went good, went through, like I say, a few exercises that we hadn't done in years, and everybody got a lot of good training on as we were going through there.
We tried to, maybe piggyback on that, we tried to slide that back, was it 2 weeks?
Yes, we tried to reschedule that, but with the MISO 120 days out, I believe you have to schedule it. They kicked us out of the loop, I guess you'd say. So,
How many loads of fuel did that take?
I pulled had Jim and Kenny get me some numbers here. We burned for that hours, it was like 9,000 something gallons of fuel. So but we had several hours there, the whole 2/3 of the town on the units, so we were producing a fair amount there. Over to the water side, we started out with that one there. We had a power failure to well 9. We had some wires coming from the plant down to well 9, which is the southernmost well. About halfway in there were some cables that failed. They were in a duct, have been there since the plant was built. We had a cable failure there, so we were able to, versus I think it was 750 feet from building to well, we were able to isolate it down to a 300-foot stretch, and then we got it chiseled down more of that. We ended up only replacing 90 feet of cable and put another splice pit in there, and we were able to get that back up and going. So it was, and everybody working together on that and tested everything out before we went through that. So that was a project there to try to determine versus just throwing the whole new cable in from one end to the other. We were able to knock that down to a pretty small area.
They just wanted to use a new backhoe, that's all it was.
Taking that data.
Yep. Continuing on with the meter installs, we're 94.8% complete. We got about 96 total remaining, which of about 60 or so are some residentials that are just not cooperating. So we're continuing to work on them. We had our monthly water testing, for the back T sampling monthly. We had a quarterly fluoride, a yearly nitrate, and radiochem. I'm not for sure what that is, but we test for it. And then we also continued with our PFAS sampling to build baseline with the Department of Health on that stuff there. So it's something that we're doing statewide just as a monitoring system to see where everybody's at. We're getting ready to fill the middle tower back up here in the next week or so, and spring flushing's right around the corner. So locates are starting to pick up, and then we've been working on some winter damaged bell boxes, curb stops, stuff, others, that's, the snow's finally gone, we can see to get that stuff repaired.
So with the 60 people or so that aren't cooperating, what is the process to get that done?
We're gonna be sending out letters as a final notification that until the water meter is replaced, that they will be charged a $25 per month meter reading fee.
Because they're not letting us in to do it, okay?
Correct. Which we will take off as soon as we get the equipment replaced.
And we've made, we're probably up to 6 or 8 attempts,
Yeah.
to different, any means possible to reach them. We've phone called and door hangered and letters, and
Emails.
so we've,
And this is common, and this is the normal process you'll see in water utilities. I mean, it's always that last few
I
percent.
think we're probably ahead of the game from what I've heard from some other communities of what we had got it down to. I think we had fairly good luck. Sounds like it's usually a bigger percentage than that they have trouble with, so.
This is about what we had last time.
Yeah.
We started out in about the 50 to 100 range, and then, what'd you say, at 60?
64.
64 will go down to about 30 after the first month or two,
Yeah.
and then it'll be down to 15, and then there'll be 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd expect that first month that the charge is on there, we'll get some attention. We'll get
Right, so did I hear you say that you cut it back once they allow the switch over or not?
Oh, not, maybe, it depends where it happens in the cycle, we're not gonna go, I mean, they're not gonna get 100% refund.
Yeah,
But,
and nor should they.
Yeah, but, in terms of, if we get in there real quick and we,
The first month here, maybe?
give them the last month back, we gotta handle that on a case-by-case
Right.
basis and the
Yeah.
timing and everything like. We don't wanna get in a situation where somebody comes in and schedules something 6 months out, and then the day before they cancel, and then schedule
Yeah.
another,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, so. Chrissy and her crew will handle all of that. As I've seen with other utilities, there might be a couple of just, okay, and they'll go, and we might have to catch it when the property flips, whether it's a renter or a homeowner.
Mhm.
I've seen that happen before too.
We had some last time that went years
Yeah,
without doing it.
yeah,
And it went from 25 to 50 to $100,
yeah,
and they just kept paying it.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard a utility in Georgia was telling me that, they had one person in particular that went years, they went to $100 a month, and she just was not gonna have anybody come in her house, and, the reason they got in was, she ended up passing away, and when the new applicant came in, they're like, oh, well, we see your meter is out of date, can we come in and replace it? Oh, yeah, no problem, and then, that was the last one. But that took a long time, so.
Okay. Anything else, Scott?
No, that should wrap it up.
Thanks, Ray. Mrs. Cunningham, Office Department.
So we did have disconnections. I believe we have everybody back on except for one household. We have been, because we have kind of a new team up there, 50% are new. This was their first outage, and we got to go through the outage process a few times. And so everybody's a pro at it now, and nobody panicked. So it was just really nice. They were able to clearly communicate and pass on any updates that we were getting back and forth. So that worked out kind of okay. We're also, our budget billing program began this month as well, so letters have gone out. They're actually being mailed out as we speak. And Ashley and I have been updating the budget process so that at some point in the future, we'd like to be able to offer that not only once a year, but offer that more consistently. When people come in, we could do it every month. We just need to have that 12 months of history with them. But I think we're getting to the point where we're able to streamline it so that it's available to more customers more frequently. It doesn't have to be just a once per year sign up. Also having a conversation with a few companies right now exploring being able to outsource our bill printing and mailing process. Working through a few different items because we do have e-bills, we have separate companies that we use for billing software. So just kind of starting that conversation to maybe outsource that, and that'll give us more time as well to kind of keep improving on other processes that we have in the office that just need to be updated. So everybody's kind of pulling up their bootstraps and digging in and seeing what else we can get done in there.
Exciting.
Seems to be.
Keeping it going. Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see, Michelle, Mrs. McPherson.
Yeah, I don't have a big update. So we're getting close to wrapping up our classification and compensation study. We have a closed session scheduled tomorrow night with the council and the consultant to kind of give them the overview and the implementation recommendation. And then if all goes well, we then have to chat with our unions and do some other things, but we're hoping to start a potential new pay structure June 1st. The business park infrastructure for the new business park, we opened bids last week. They came in slightly over the engineer's estimate. The low bidder, fairly new company, failed to submit all of their documentation, i.e. their bid bond and a couple other things, and then never returned phone calls to our engineer. So we are going to the next lowest bidder, and so we're going to award that on Thursday evening. Tentative start date mid-June. We are also working with George, he's here, on financing the infrastructure. We obviously have some lot sales. We also have a grant that we're applying for, but we have to pay for the rest of it somehow, especially if not all the lots get sold this year. We are working pretty stringently, exuberantly on getting the Element Group through a tax increment financing process and helping them, and we'll be submitting a Minnesota Investment Fund application for them as part of that. They are also, they've also applied for a job creation fund, dollars from the state. We remain fully staffed. I haven't lost anybody in the last month, so that's good. Our auditors, which are your auditors, are in-house right now. So they'll be here today, tomorrow, and maybe Friday, I'm not sure. In addition to the Smith-Schaefer folks, we have Julie from Abdo. They did most of the audit prep stuff for us. So probably will end up having them one more year as I have her work with Lane in our office to hopefully in the next year or two pick up all that audit prep work, so, or a good chunk of it anyway. I'll be out as well as our tech manager and police chief and public works director at annual LMC safety and loss control seminar in St. Cloud. They do those every year. They usually have some pretty good sessions on various ways to kind of watch out for opportunities to reduce your potential insurance claims, those types of things. So there's a good, what looks to be a decent session on cybersecurity and some other things this year. So, but that's really about it. We were just kind of chugging along. So.
All right, any questions for Michelle? All right, thank you. Mr. Butcher.
Yeah, a few things you've heard from the department heads. Just want to let you know, PPU did receive the APPA's 2022 Reliability Award as well as the Safety Award of Excellence. So continues to show the focused staff places on both of those activities. So we'll have announcements going out over time to promote those those awards. We do continue to formalize many of our internal administrative and finance functions. Some things that we're working on the finance side is formalizing our depreciation schedules, which will be helpful as we start paying for phase one of the cap plan, as well as our cost allocations to make sure that we're distributing our costs across both departments in an appropriate way. We've been tracking expenditures in relation to the South Substation incident on April 7th that Jeremy talked about. We've been in communication with our insurance agent on that and expect to file a claim. Even communicated a little bit with them this morning. Our deductible, I want to say, is $5,000. Initial estimates is the cost of that outage is probably going to be pushing about $50,000 is my guess. I don't have all the numbers yet, so we'll file an insurance claim on that and try to minimize our costs. Excuse me. Also, been working internally on creating a memo review process for new developments that is being processed by the city. I've been sharing that with Michelle and Mary Lou over at the city to just make sure that we document and get some questions answered as development projects are being evaluated, and try to make sure that the city and the utility are kind of talking with one unified voice on development proposals. So I've tried a couple on those. I think it's been working out pretty well. Mary Lou seems to be happy with the process.
Yep, she's very pleased with that. She knows, where everybody's at with their thought process, and then it's very easy just to reference that comment memo in her staff report as far part of conditions of approval for any particular development. So
yeah. So that, and the whole idea is just to make sure that we don't have any misunderstandings, that there's not all these side conversations going on, and get into a he said, she said kind of situation. So I think it helps formalize that whole process a little bit more.
It's one document. It's one document coming from us.
yep.
Yes, to the city, and then the city is the primary conduit to all the development, which is where it should be. And that way we don't get in a situation where we might have a developer trying to play one entity against the other. This way we're together on it. This is what the community needs, and it is what it is. So I think that's been working out well. We're continuing to work with East Central Energy on service territory annexations. This work began because the city did annex several lots this year. With those additions, it was also necessary to clean up some service territory boundaries between the two organizations. So Jeremy and I are meeting with them next week. As Michelle mentioned, it's Auditor Week. We had our auditors on site Monday and Tuesday. They're now at the city. That all went well. They got all the information they needed. So they'll be working on their report for last year's finances. On the energy efficiency side, we issued rebates to Greater Life Church and the school district. And today, SIMPA sent out the direct mail pieces. They asked for a mailing list for our residential customers. They wanted to do some direct mail, so those went out. So our customers will be receiving information on our rebate programs. On the regulatory side, we did submit the renewal permit for the Title V air permit to the NPCA with the help from Travis Ziff over at DGR. Did receive notice on the 10th that our application was, and in typical government speak, complete enough for processing. So that's where we're at on that. As I've mentioned before, air permit renewals can sometimes take some time, so we're waiting for the MPCA to start looking at that. For some of our external partners, SIMPA did hold the Sherco tour on the 31st. Chair Schwartz and Commissioner Edmonds did join. I thought that tour went very well. SIMPA's Finance and Audit Committee, we met on the 12th, reviewed and recommended approval of SIMPA's auditor's report. So it's just audit season for everybody. But all that was clean and looked good. We are doing, the utility is doing a This is Princeton podcast recording next Wednesday on the 3rd. Nancy from SIMPA and I will be doing it together. Nancy will talk about our rebate programs, and I'll just kind of give an update on utility activities for that podcast. And I do have an MMUA board meeting tomorrow, the 27th. That's a remote one, so I'll just be zooming in for that. That's what I have on my end. Oh, I should mention, Dan, I gave you a copy. Rick, you have the magazine itself. Jack, I can get you a copy as well. There was a write-up in the Great Northern Goat, is the name of the magazine. It's just for railroad enthusiasts. There's an article in there on the telegraph system that the Mille Lacs County Historical Society put together, and they mention their collaboration with the utility. They even have some pictures of the guys putting up the telegraph lines. So it was just kind of, Barry brought that over and wanted to make sure that we had some copies. So kind of a neat little article. So I'm
I'll probably get one anyway.
Huh?
I'll probably get one from them anyway.
That's kind of what I figured, yeah. But if not, I do have more copies in my office.
But what day were you gonna do that podcast?
We're recording it on Wednesday, but I think they typically take like a month to process it. 'Cause they just did
What, a week
their,
from today, or
huh?
a week from today?
Is when we're recording it, yes. Because they just released, Barry was the latest one.
Yeah.
His just came out this week, I think, so I think they record them early and make sure they get everything processed and timed to release the way they want it. Well,
You have time to fact check everything.
yeah, I'm sure that's it.
Who did you say though the award was from, the reliability award and safety?
APPA, which is the American Public Power Association.
Kudos. Nice to get those things.
It is. It is. The recognition is nice, especially for something so important as safety and reliability. So, notwithstanding the last month.
Yeah, after last month, what are you gonna get?
I'm just
B plus.
I would try to give you an A, but.
Thank you, Keith.
yes, sir.
Regular agenda item review of the revenue bonds. There is 206A. George, I'm calling your name. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. George Eilertson, Northland Securities. Thank you for time on your agenda today. In your packets, board, I've got a couple of attachments and then a resolution ultimately that'll be on your agenda here next, which relates to the 2006 Minnesota Consortium of Municipal Utilities bonds that that you have outstanding. And I'll summarize the memo that I wrote that so when you issue new bonds, we have to look back and comply with covenants that are in existence on bonds that you have outstanding. And so it's the 2006 MCMU bonds. At that time, the utility borrowed for water project as well as for an electric project. So there were two separate bonds, but at the time you did utilize that financing tool for a water and electric project. And so the bond documents relate or state that the gross revenues of the electric and water utilities are dedicated to payment of the bonds. And so whether it be an electric project or a water project, both utilities, if you will, are earmarked towards the payment of those bonds. And so working with the attorney, the bond attorney, on getting ready for your upcoming series of bonds, we thought that it would be best to clean that up. And the way to clean that up is actually to pay off those bonds. One of two approaches, actually. One would be pay off the bonds. The other would be to refinance those bonds with the upcoming 2023 bonds. And so working with Keith and working with Kathy in the office, we looked at the reserve funds. So there's an existing debt service reserve fund dedicated to those electric revenue bonds from 2006. And then there's a little bit of reserve fund actually left over from paying off bonds last year. So it would take approximately, there's a sheet in your packets, board, a little spreadsheet that talks about the debt service required to call the bonds. So to pay off the remaining principal and any accrued interest would be $576,875. You have existing debt service reserve funds tied to these bonds of $334,000. So the balance required in addition to those existing reserve funds is $253,000. And so paying off those bonds prior to issuing the new bonds just cleans up the legal documents. And that way you're not needing to dedicate your revenues of your water utility to the payment of your electric revenue bonds as well. If you have future financings for the water utility, you're not dedicating the electric funds. So it just kind of cleans things up going forward, and it's my recommendation, board, that you consider that resolution today to pay off the remaining balance of that 2006 bond. I did review this with Blair Metzger from DGR. He, of course, had worked with you on some cash flow projections, and so the cash flow projection actually assumed, when it was put together, that the utility would pay off the 2006, 2010, and 2012 bonds. Now, one of them retired. You paid off one early last year, and then the assumption that you would pay off the 2006 bonds this year. That's all already worked into that cash flow projection. And to quote Blair, if I could, he said there's plenty of cash in the utility to do this and to have good cash flow going forward. So I can certainly address any questions that you have. Approving this resolution today pays off the 2006 bonds on June 30th. So we would work with your staff on getting the funds freed up to make that payment on June 30th.
So I have a question. In reducing cash to pay off these bonds, does that affect the bond rating at all?
That should not. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. Certainly incorporating Blair into the conversation with the cash flow projection, that incorporates your cash into that model as well. And he felt sufficient cash to pay off existing debt as well as cover existing debt and O&M costs going forward. So that's one of the things that Moody's Investor Service, for example, looks at when we work with them on an upcoming bond rating is cash. And so it's felt that there's sufficient cash not only to pay this off, in particular since a lot of the cash to do this is already in dedicated debt service reserve funds tied to these bonds already. So it would be using $253,000 of additional utility cash. So good question. There is sufficient cash to do both, and that's certainly something when we've looked at historical operations for the utility, there's plenty of coverage in terms of your operations and what cash you generate annually.
Okay, so in doing so, if I read this correctly, I read it a few days ago, and it reduces, I want to address the commission that, and Keith, if we do that, doesn't it bring our 180 days down to 157 or something like that?
Yeah, I wrote a memo as well. Staff is supportive of the recommendation. I just wanted to point out that it is coming out of cash. If you look at in the financial report, you'll see that we're currently at like 170 something, and obviously the $253,000 has to come from somewhere. So it would reduce the cash amount and probably bring our days of cash on hand down to 158. Roughly.
Yeah.
It doesn't put us out of compliance with any official commission order, because that was actually set at 80 days. But I am sensitive to the commission's desire to be 180, so I just wanted the commission to recognize the impact.
And rightly so, and I thank you for that. How long, and I know it's variable, but how long before we recover that?
Well, I guess it's going to come back to when the bond money comes in, because we passed a resolution, I'm sorry, commission, I gotta be careful, I'd say, the commission passed a resolution allowing us to retroactively pay for costs associated with the cap plan once we get the bonds in. We have been spending money for some material, not to mention the engineering work and some other things, which we'll reimburse ourselves back with. Once those bonds come in, that should replenish, I would think, our cash reserves to be at where we want it to be. And then we'll just keep moving forward. So I do see it as more of a blip, I guess, would be how I would look at it. It's something that we just want to keep an eye on the next couple of months, because even though, and you see it in our reports, I mean, we're down a little bit because we tend to incur a lot of expenses in the beginning of the year, equipment, front ending some of that, and then we got to wait for the revenues for the year to pick up. So I think that will bounce back, but it will drop it in the short term.
Yeah. So I'd like to address the commission again. If you remember when we were hovering around 90 days, if we stayed at 90 days and didn't move it to 180, we won't be able to do this. So that was, I commend the commission on that forward thinking, because we wouldn't even be considering it with 90 days. We drop at 10 and, we're on that borderline. So, wise moves made.
I got one question. So what's the bond payment that would go away with that?
That's on your sheet, right, George?
It is the, so you would be reducing the annual payment for the 2006 bonds is right around $240,000 a year. And if the covenants didn't exist that pledged your water utility to your electric projects, we probably wouldn't even need to talk about this. I think it's just really twofold. One is cleaning that up so that you're just dedicating electric to electric. And then twofold, those bonds are out at 4.05%. They've kind of been a thorn in the side, to be honest, of the utility for years, because there's so many administrative costs associated with that bond. And so we've incorporated a payoff fee, or a breakage fee they call it, into these numbers. And the nice thing is you'll eliminate, it's on that sheet, I apologize, there is approximately $11,300 of remaining administrative costs, fees paid to basically MCMU and the firm that operates the fund, that you'll save as well. So I thank you for the conversation about days cash on hand, because in terms of, and this was going to be an item I was going to talk about here at the end, was when will the bond proceeds come in? And it's good that you took that step of a reimbursement resolution. So that's, I'm glad Keith brought that up. That's a step where you're saying, we're going to issue tax exempt bonds. We're having to dip into our own cash in the short term, but we're going to pay ourselves back with tax exempt bonds when the proceeds are available. So the IRS wants you to see this resolution, which you did. The timeline, general timeline going forward, is that we'll be working with Keith, getting a bond official statement put together and working on a bond rating between May and June, and then working on pricing these bonds in July. And so you get the money in August. Fortunately, I was talking to Andy here a little bit ago that it won't be heavy expenses, if I can quote you, Andy, between now and the next several months in terms of invoices. And so that's nice. So you won't be continually spending down in large chunks your cash reserves. So And when we do work with the rating agency, we do talk about just that question, which is your days cash on hand maybe has a blip, but you will be replenishing it. So it's not, it's a common question in the rating agency world. You know, do you plan to spend down your fund balances? And is it kind of a measured spend down, one-time occurrence, you know, kind of those types of questions. So in your case, it would be that, you know, we aren't really, we're spending them down on the short term, but replenishing them with the bonds, so.
So if I heard you right, the admin cost of 11,000+, we could look at it, that savings could go towards the break fee. You know, looking at that kind of a wash, yes, there's a cost to break it, but then we're also saving that 11,000 from the lack or no admin fees
Right.
going forward.
Yep, so you'll save about $23,000 in interest cost, as well as about $11,000 in administrative costs. Now, we also looked at this where, what if we piggybacked on top of the upcoming bond issue? And, you know, could you do that? And that's the other alternative. It's about a wash, meaning that would you save money on refinancing the bonds? It's about a push. So it works out. The reason why is that you're absorbing part of the cost of issuance of the new bonds, and the outstanding bonds are about 4%, the new bonds are 4-ish, and so there's not a lot of interest cost savings there to refinance. So from a savings perspective, it's better to do the payoff approach.
Just out of curiosity, if we let this bond run out, when would it expire, or when would it finalize?
It would, the final payment would be December 1st of '25. So it's only got a few more years left, which is nice. And we've literally been talking about this for better part of 15 years, I think. And that breakage fee used to be a real onerous number, because it used to be a couple $100,000 they wanted to charge to get out of the financing. But now it's kind of down to in that 10,000 range.
Yeah, that was gonna be my other question. Excuse me, my other question has been answered, so there's, and I think I'm gonna support this, by any means. It's not a good, right thing to do, but we're not incurring any penalty type costs, I guess I'll just use that word, or prepaying it.
You know, the only one is that breakage fee,
Right.
is the only,
But that's being offset
yes,
by other savings, so.
It's
Yes.
justifiable by taking the action.
yes. So really two benefits here. One is the, you know, interest cost savings, but primarily the biggest benefit is really to clean up the documents going forward. So we're just pledging the utilities project that's being, has a project, if you will.
And I saw a recommendation, Keith, is that correct?
Yes, like I said, staff recommends adoption of resolution 23-06 with the commission's understanding that you may see a drop in days of cash on hand once the payment gets issued on June, you say June?
Right at the end of June, June 30th.
June 30th. So it will affect the June reports when we talk about it in July.
Sure.
Just so you know, but that's what's going to happen. But yes, if, we are looking for a motion to adopt resolution 2306.
Is there any other questions from the commission? I don't have any myself. Jack?
No.
Then I would ask for a,
I'll move, approve resolution 2306, pay off the 2006 A bonds.
I'll second.
there's a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So to piggyback onto what George had to say, those cash proceeds from the bond sale should arrive, when do you think, in August?
In August, first half of August.
First half of August, okay. So we will, you'll want to keep an eye on that cash balance as material invoices come through, along with the invoices from the Castronon contract. Just so we can keep an eye on that cash level. One more handout. So thanks for giving me a little bit of your time today. Stan and I were in the area for another work commitment, and I thought it would be proper to drop in and give you a quick update on where we're at with the Phase 1 project budget, as well as take a look at where we are heading with the rest of the CIP. So the first document I have in front of you is titled the project budget updates. And as you can see, we have an established budget of right around $6 million that was established back in June of '22. The actual cost data as it comes in, we've come in well below budget. And in zeroing the project dollars out, what I've done is anything that's come in under budget, I've just tucked back into the contingencies fund, right? So pad that contingencies fund. That contingencies fund currently sits just shy of $1 million. So we're doing well. What are the reasons for that? Why are we so far under budget? Well, we were able to secure bids from a transformer manufacturer that is significantly less expensive compared to some of the newer, not newer, but new transformers out there that are a lot more expensive. And that's due to Jeremy and Keith's relationship with B&B there. We also have some savings on the secondary side as well. So we're looking really, really good for Phase 1. The only bid opening we have left on the project is a meter cutover contract, and that's a project for essentially the work on the houses. Typically, you're going to get a local contractor that's going to bid on that work. We estimate that project around $418,200. That was our budget line item, but that project is still under design, and we'll update that estimate as we get closer. But we're feeling really good there. We do have 3 years to spend down those bond funds once they hit your account per IRS rules, and we're going to have no problem doing that. What we are looking at is likely going to have.
We'll get it done.
Yeah.
We will spend the money.
But his work is free, right?
We'll get it done.
Okay, let me rephrase that. The contracted work and the material deliveries, exclusive of PPU staff work, will be spent by the end of '25.
I mean, if I may ask, Mr. Chair, like you said, we're doing really well. We bond out for, $6 million. If we only spend 5.9, do we have to give the 100,000 back? Is that how it would typically work? Or?
No, my recommendation would be to find a home for it by either pre-purchasing some additional materials for next year's or not next year, but the Phase 2 projects.
Yeah.
Get ahead of that rather than wait for inflation to keep those prices moving up forward.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have a problem finding a home for those dollars. Yep. So that kind of leads me into the discussion of the schedule. So the big 11 by 17 sheet I have here is what I have thought out, and it's marked draft, what I have thought out as far as how I think the rest of your electrical CIP is going to work for our 10-year period. Now, one of the directives that Keith gave me when we started in on this was that lead times are a problem, and they continue to be an issue in our industry. What we don't want to happen is, okay, let's get Phase 1 done, and then, okay, well, let's start on Phase 2. Well, we can design it, but we're not gonna be constructing anything in 2 to 3 years because of lead times. We didn't want that to happen. So we really wanna see some construction activity every year, which I'm sure Jeremy's gonna be happy to see. So we're looking at construction activity all the way out through 2028. And I've kind of color-coded everything, with green being the remainder of what we had scheduled for phase 1, red being phase 2, and blue being phase 3. A couple things to note there. If you go to the legend, there's some D as in Delta shown throughout the document. Those would be our anticipated delivery dates or estimated delivery dates for those pieces of equipment based on the bid time we have shown here. And one of the other things I want to draw your attention to is the start of phase 2. So in order to keep our schedule of having some type of construction happening every construction season, we show starting on the phase 2 design in July of this summer. Now that's going to be beneficial in a couple ways. Number one, it's going to give us plenty of time to design so that if something happens in the near term where equipment lead times go way out, we have a little bit of cushion to try and move up those bid time frames to go and get that material for phase 2. The second part of it is, as part of the construction contracts, Stan will typically come up and meet with Jeremy and or his designee every month during the construction season to measure out units that'll get paid on the underground contract to the construction contractor. And it just makes sense that if Stan's gonna be up here doing some of that he's also doing some design for phase 2 while he's up there. Really, it's an efficient move for our staff, and I think our team would like to handle it that way as well. So something to consider. I show us coming up here probably in that July timeframe, asking for authorization to start the preliminary design of phase 2. But I at least wanted to kind of get a schedule in front of you of what I was thinking. The one thing that may catch your eye is the blue on the bottom for phase 3 does not appear to be shifted as far right on the schedule as following phase 2. It appears to start in 24-25 timeframe. There's a specific reason for that. I know that's the next item on the list here, but Princeton Public Utilities is applying for a grant for that project. And in order, that grant has a 5-year window of spend down. So technically in our application, we had to show some time for design activities and to get it all spent down during that 5-year window. So that's why we started in 2024, because that's the earliest any activities could start on the grant. And that is also on the left-hand side, where if you look at the names of the activities, once you get to the phase 3 SCADA/IIJA grant, all the activities listed there are different language, different words than what we normally like to use, because it's tied to the grant itself. So I know our original CIP put us out to 2030. We had phase 3 shown as being finished up, 2027 to 2030, and we'll still hopefully arrive at that target at the end of 2028, assuming that we want to maintain a path forward where we do a construction project every season, or if we think we may need to put a break in there to get perhaps caught up on other Princeton projects, we could certainly do that and still maintain our 2030 date, so a couple year cushion. You'll also see in here new substation transformers, anywhere from 2.5 years. So we're going to order that for the north substation and for the power plant well ahead of when they're going to arrive in Princeton. Those lead times could shrink as we move forward, but we need to plan for where we're at today. But that is all I had on my list.
Any questions for Andy? All right, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Thanks. Got a great team behind me back at the office, and that guy.
2024, 2025, you're gonna be busy.
Okay. C, Mr. Butcher.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we've kind of already talked a little bit about this. The Principal Public Utilities is pursuing a grant through the Grid Resiliency and Innovative Products portion of the IIJA federal funding effort. We were successful in surviving the first screen by the entities that are working, coordinating between MMUA and MREA, the co-ops and munis in this state, as well as utilities in the region, to put that together a regional application. So we did make the cut for that, and we were included, which meant that we had to start, and I shouldn't say we, Andy put together a lot more detail for those applications, and he's been working very hard on that, and he's done great work. And one of the requirements in order to keep moving the process forward is the federal government does like to have a formal letter of commitment from the governing board stating that you are allocating funds for this particular project. It is a 50% match. Initially, we put in a placeholder of around $750,000 to $850,000. Again, that was just kind of a very preliminary cost estimate, not knowing exactly what we would find when we start really kind of doing the engineering work on it. So I know DGR really kind of sharpened their pencils and tried to figure out some of those details. Provided all the information to the group that's kind of putting this application together, and actually came up with, based on their methodology, a number of $532,640. So at a 50% match, that means that the utility would provide half of that fund, half of that money, and the other half would come from the grant program. So the letter of commitment is just that, the commission stating that yes, they're supportive of this project, and they will allocate funds to its use. The letter that was in the packet, like I said, has a placeholder in it. What we are asking for is a motion to approve the letter with a modification of changing the amount to $532,640, which is the total project cost. And then that will allow us to keep our application moving forward. Last communication I received from MMUA is that they are, quote, cautiously optimistic that the applications are going to be viewed favorably and move forward. So I think it's a great opportunity for us. It will help keep the pressure down on rates so that we don't have to impact our ratepayers as much and help save them some money. So we're asking for approval of the letter of commitment.
So the 532 is replacing the 850?
Correct, 532,640.
Right. So we are looking for that, unless the commission has any other questions.
I don't have any.
I'm good.
You want a motion, what are we approving, a letter of commitment for WIP?
Yes, if you, we're looking for a motion to approve the letter of commitment with the modification of total project costs equaling $532,640. Or if you want to say what Keith said.
My motion.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Not having any other business, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, if I may, real quick?
Yes.
So before we do an official adjournment, just a reminder that we are doing the tour here today. So we'll give people time for a break and see if anybody else shows up. Otherwise, we can walk over, just kind of review the facilities. We do have a tri-cap bus picking us up over past the water treatment plant at 3:45. So we have some time to really kind of show you what the operations are. But looking forward to the tour. And We're hoping to be done by 5:30, but it all depends what kind of questions you folks might have.
Excellent, thanks for that announcement. Any other information? Discussion? May I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned. Thank you.